Okay, good morning all of you. Any questions from last classes?
Sir, I have a few doubts in the assignments.
Yes.
In the fifth question, while we are calculating the neutral axis depth for the over-reinforced section, it's turning out to be a complex number, sir. Like there are no real roots for the equation. I guess the moment should be reduced a bit. So with that moment, we are getting negative, like complex roots.
To look at it, but
Yes, sir.
whether other
Like,
students have similar kind of
yes, sir.
huh?
Yes, sir. Like the balanced section depth turned out to be 992, sir. That is reduced to 400. So maybe large decrease in depth might be the reason.
Yeah, maybe you can try like that. Okay.
So, sir, if the depth of the section is changed, then maybe that might help.
Just wait a minute. Who is the other one speaking?
Sir, I'm Yashvita, sir. The first one was Chetna.
Okay. If you don't mind, can you send an email?
Okay.
Sure, sir. Like from fourth question to sixth question, we have doubts, sir.
Okay. Okay. You send an email. Okay.
Okay, sir. Sure, sir.
So in the last class, we looked at this how to design a T section. Okay. Basically, the design that we looked at is like first of all, a T section or a T beam is like that shape is coming. T beam or inverted L beam, that shape is actually we are getting it because we want to take advantage of slab which is monolithically casted along with the beam. Okay. Only when there is a kind of when you can ensure that there is a perfect bond between them, or they act together, slab and beam, then only we can take advantage of this slab along with the beam, and it becomes a T section or a T beam or a inverted L beam depending on the location of the beam in the entire floor plan. Okay. And now in yesterday's class, what we looked at is once you know all the dimensions of a T section or a T beam, like if you know what is the depth of the slab or depth of the flange, capital DF, and if you know depending on the other conditions like spacing between the beams and other things, or if you let me go to that, yeah. If you know the spacing between these beams and also other things depending on the end conditions, boundary conditions, you can actually calculate your effective depth of flange using these formulas which are given in the code. That is L0 divided by 12 plus 3 DF, capital DF plus BW for inverted L section, or L0 divided by 6 plus 6 capital DF plus BW. All what each of these stands for, what is this L0 and other things we discussed in detail in the earlier classes, and also that is what is given in code IS 456. Page 47 is giving you the details about it. And so L0 depends on the end conditions, boundary conditions, depending on the whether it is simply supported or it is fixed or different, whether it is continuous beam and other things. So basically L0 is the distance between the points of zero moments. So this BF is going to depend on all these things. Okay. And next thing is this depth of the beam, this depth of the web, that we will see in today's class. And in last class, the problem that we looked at is given DF, given capital DF, given the width of the web, and also overall depth of the beam if it is given, subtracting this slab thickness from overall depth, we got the depth of the web section, And so we got everything, all the geometric dimensions we got, already they are given in the problem statement, and you are asked to find what is the area of steel. And so the problem is to get the area of steel, we need to know the lever arm distance. Unless to get the lever arm distance, you need to know what is neutral axis depth. And if you recall how we calculated neutral axis depth, we equated moments of areas in compression to moments of areas in tension. And so there we require what is the area of steel. So we don't know area of steel, so we cannot get the neutral axis depth. So once we don't know what is neutral axis depth, we cannot find what is the lever arm distance. So this is the issue. To get the area of steel for this problem, we need to start somewhere with a guess value or approximate value of this lever arm distance. So the guideline is you take lever arm distance, the guess value of lever arm distance as 0.9 times the effective depth, or D, the overall effective depth minus half of the depth of the flange, whichever is larger. You take the lever arm distance out of these two, whichever is larger. So that is what a guideline. So based on that guideline, we started with a guess value of lever arm, and once we get the lever arm, approximate value of lever arm, we can use it and divide moment with moment divided by the permissible stress in steel multiplied by the lever arm distance is going to give you approximate value of steel. And using this approximate value of steel, we actually calculated the neutral axis depth. And then also we found where the resultant compressive force is lying. And based on that, we arrived at the lever arm distance. Once we get the lever arm distance, that is all. This is what is given here. And once we get the lever arm distance, you calculate once again using the whatever from this calculation, whatever you get the lever arm distance, use that and calculate area of steel. And you just check whether the area of steel that you get here matches with the area of steel that you started with. And if they are close enough, then you can stop the iteration. Otherwise, you need to do one more iteration till in successive steps, the area of steel matches. Okay. And so this is basically an iterative kind of process. And then once you get the final, or once you get confidence that the area of steel is converged in the sense subsequent in subsequent steps, the area of steel turns out to be almost same, then you can stop the iteration, and using that area of steel you can calculate. Once you know have that area of steel, you know entire section details, so you can calculate stresses in the concrete and stresses in the steel at various locations, critical locations, and check whether they are within the permissible limits or not. So this is the procedure that we looked at in the last class. Any questions here? Professor Amlan, you want to add something?
Sir.
Yes.
So what if permissible limit comes out to be greater than 7 sigma CVC dash?
Can you repeat?
What if sigma CVC prime comes out to be greater than 7?
Then we need to relook into it. Here there is nothing but the moment this beam has to withstand, and this is the total compressive force. This is the total compressive force multiplied by the lever arm distance. Sorry, this is not total compressive force. This is total area in compression. Total, this 87 is 87,930, whatever is there. That is total area in compression. And this is the lever arm distance. So what you are saying is, if this turns out to be greater than the permissible value, what I need to do? Then you need to increase your compression area. How do you increase your compression area? You need to either go with increasing the amount of steel in tension, or you go as a doubly reinforced T section. You need to provide additional steel in the compression region. Is it clear?
Okay, sir. Okay. Actually, there was a question in the assignment in which it was coming out to be greater than 7. So should we make it doubly reinforced?
Yes. Please note that We are going one by one, okay? Step by step, we are learning things, and once you become mature, you can combine depending on your convenience. That is where you are actually the ingenuity is going to come, or your creativity is going to come, or is going to reflect there, okay? Finally, we need to solve the problem. In the sense, we need to design the section such a way that all the stresses are within the limits and it is complying with the codal requirements.
Yes, sir. Thanks.
Any other questions? Professor Amlan, you want to add something?
No, not for this problem.
Okay, so is that clear? So you need to bring out all your creativity. Okay, you are learning various concepts. Then if you happen to encounter a situation where you need to somehow reduce the stresses, or with the permissible, or stresses are exceeding the permissible values, you need to add something. Either you add the steel or you increase the area in compression by providing more thickness. Please note that in T-beams, we don't have much choice. We cannot increase the slab thickness because slab thickness is going to be dictated by something else. Only thing is we have a choice of increasing the depth of the web. Okay. Okay. Let's go further. Anyway, we'll try to complete this T-beam. A small portion is left out, and we'll look at it. So whatever T-beam that we looked at, and please note that how to arrive at the depth of the web, that is not discussed. So some guideline is given here. Okay, let's go through this procedure in design of T-beams. The maximum bending moment which is to be carried by beam is worked out. Anyway, and yesterday there was an email from somebody. What is this limiting moment of resistance? Is it something to do with limit state? Please note that when you see limiting word, it doesn't mean it is related to limit state. Limiting means what is the maximum moment or moment carrying capacity of that beam. Okay. So similarly here, once you want to design a beam, you need to arrive at the maximum bending moment. The maximum bending moment which is to be carried by the beam is worked out. The flange thickness is available as it is the thickness of slab already designed. That's what I mentioned. We don't have much choice in dictating or in choosing different values for DF because it's going to be dictated by the slab thickness. Okay, and the effective depth of T-beam for a preliminary calculations. So this is what, if effective depth is not given, this is how you need to proceed. The effective depth of T-beams for preliminary calculations may be taken as 1/12 of span for heavy loads. This is just a guideline. What is meant by heavy load? What is meant by medium load? What is meant by light load? That you need to use your discretion. Okay. So for preliminary calculations may be taken as this. Effective depth for T-beams can be taken as 1/12 of span for heavy loads, 1/12 to 1/15 of span for medium, 1/15 to 1/20 of span for light loads. So this is a guideline. We'll see how we'll be using this in a problem. Okay. Now we got the effective depth, and then what about the rib width, BW? Rib width may be approximately taken as half of the rib depth, usually between 200 mm to 300 mm. And sufficient to accommodate the tensile reinforcement. The width should be sufficient to accommodate the tensile reinforcement. Some cases, if you are providing more reinforcement, or if you are selecting smaller diameter size bar, maybe the width may not be enough. Then you need to provide in 2 layers. You need to provide reinforcement in 2 layers. When you provide reinforcement in 2 layers, please note that your lever arm is going to reduce, because lever arm distance is from the it's measured from the extreme fiber in compression to the centroid of the steel. If you are providing steel in 2 layers, then it's going to be a centroid of those 2 layers. Okay, so there is some kind of issue with that. But if it is like it turns out to be okay for your design, you can adopt it. So width of the rib width has to be selected based on that. Okay, the flange width BF may be determined in accordance with the provisions given in the specifications of IS 456, which we just looked at. Okay. So once we have all this information, the sectional area of reinforcement is then obtained on the basis of approximate value of lever arm distance. This is what we did in the last class, and just now I just briefly recapped all that thing. Okay, you need to start with the approximate value of lever arm, the actual position of neutral axis, and the actual value of lever arm are then obtained, and the resulting maximum stress in concrete and steel are then checked whether they are within the permissible limits or not. This is how the procedure for a T section is like, no, you can adopt, or same thing even for inverted L section. Only thing is the difference between T beam and L beam is one side flange will not be there for L beam. Okay, and so you can follow this if the effective depth is not given in the problem statement. Okay, so now this is one thing. The other one is there any other way of that's also discussed here. Depth of balance section of a T beam. So let's go through it for completeness. Okay, and if you know the permissible stresses in steel, permissible stresses in concrete, and you can calculate what is modular ratio, and you can also, for a balanced rectangular section, you can also calculate what is the neutral axis depth for a like, you know, if the permissible stresses are given. And T beam is like, you know, you can assume it to be a rectangular beam if the neutral axis depth falls within the flange region. Okay. Anyway, as a like, you know, preliminary thing, or as a first guess, that is what is done. Depth of balance section of a T beam, the neutral axis depth of T beam, of balance section in terms of permissible stresses in concrete and steel and modular ratio is given by this one. This you are familiar with. Okay, this is same as for a rectangular section. And before we proceed further, let me ask you to take a note of this. Please take a note of this one. You don't need to take a note of these dimensions and other things. At least you take a note of this figure, a T beam, and also this the stress diagram or the compressive force diagram. You take a note of it, compressive force diagram, and also T section, assuming neutral axis to fall in the web region. Okay. And now here, here the neutral axis is actually, for this problem, it turned out that it is falling in the web region. And here, the total compressive force has some contribution from this web region as well. Okay. And if you ignore this portion, compressive force contribution from the web region, then it's going to be a trapezium. This total compressive force is going to be looking like a trapezoid. Okay. And for a while, let's ignore the total compressive force contributed by this web region, and let's assume only flange is taking all the compression. Okay. And so then our stress, this compressive force diagram is going to become simplified, and it's going to look like a trapezoid. And for a trapezoid, how do you calculate? If you know the dimensions of the parallel sides, and if you know the distance between the parallel sides, how do you get the centroid? So that details let's note down before we proceed further. So just take a note of this one. If you have a trapezium like this, and the dimensions are shown here, the distance between the parallel sides is the small d, and one of the parallel side is B1, another parallel side is B, And if that is the case, the centroidal distance, the distance of the centroid from the top edge, top edge is denoted with C, that is given by this formula. You please take a note of it, and rest of the things you don't need, you can ignore them. And if you want, you can take a note of this area. Small a is nothing but area of trapezoid here. And C is what we are interested now. C is what we actually want because now our stress or compressive force distribution or diagram is looking like a trapezium. To get the lever arm distance, I need to know where the resultant compressive force is going to fall from the top edge. So I am interested in this one, this formula. You take a note of this. Okay, small d divided by, and now you just go back to the figure which I asked you to note down, the T-beam. I told you to ignore the compressive force contribution from the web region, and then the resultant compressive force at what location it's going to be. It's given by this D, the small d, which is shown here in this figure, corresponds to capital DF there, depth of the flange. Depth DF, capital DF divided by 3 plus, divided by 3 multiplied by 2 times B, small b. What is this 2 times B? In that the compressive force diagram that you looked at, it's going to be the top stress. Stress in the extreme fiber is sigma CBC. If the stress in the top fiber is sigma CBC here, let's say B1 is equal to sigma CBC, then what's going to be B? B is going to be, in that particular case, B is going to be sigma CBC multiplied by N minus DF divided by N. Okay, so you take B1 as sigma CBC, B as, I hope you are noting down, B as sigma CBC multiplied by small n neutral axis depth minus DF, capital DF divided by N. Okay, multiplied by sigma CBC. So please note down here, when you substitute all that information, here B as whatever I just told you, sigma CBC multiplied by N minus capital DF divided by N, and B1 as sigma CBC, and simplify, sigma CBC is going to get cancelled in the numerator and denominator. Rest of the quantity is going to be function of your depth of flange and neutral axis depth. Okay, is it clear? So now you got that the location of that is the total compressive force, resultant compressive force ignoring the compression in the web region, where it's going to fall. You can get an idea using this relation. So that is what, once you get that, you can find the lever arm distance. So let me go to the figure and explain. So now you have this one. This is nothing but small b1, and this is nothing but your small b, and small b1 is taken as sigma CBC, and small b1 is taken as sigma CBC. Small b is going to be sigma CBC times capital sigma CB times N minus capital DF divided by N, and based on that you just calculated what is the neutral axis or the resultant compressive force, where that is going to fall from the top edge. Okay, this distance. So once you get this distance, ignoring this portion contribution from the web, you can easily find the lever arm distance. So if you understood that explanation, all that details are given here. Neutral axis depth is given by this, and the total compressive force is actually average in the sense here, this equation, total area of this trapezoid is A is equal to D times B plus B1 divided by 2. What is D? D is nothing but your depth of the flange, and B1, B2 are in terms of sigma C, BC. All that information is given here. So this is the total compressive force, ignoring the compressive force contribution from the web region. So that is what is mentioned here. The depth of the section is determined on the assumption that compression on the web is negligible and can be ignored. Hence, total compressive force equals total compressive force in the flange, and is given by this form. And where this resultant compressive force, where it's going to act from the top edge, and if you subtract that from the effective depth, you are going to get the lever arm distance. So what I suggest is you please you have taken note of that trapezoid centroidal distance and area of trapezium, how you calculate that, and with that information and with applied to our stress distribution or the compressive force diagram, you can check whether these quantities are correct or not, this lever arm distance. Okay, so finally this lever arm distance is going to be a function of neutral axis depth and depth of the flange. And once you get this this lever arm distance, you can find the total compressive force multiplied by the lever arm is going to give you the moment, and then that moment is what this is. Okay, you can go through all this. It's very easy to follow. You can go through this. And wherever small n is the neutral axis depth, wherever small n neutral axis depth is there, it is replaced with K times D. K is neutral axis depth factor. And finally, this is applied moment. And this small bf is going to be function of your the effective flange width is going to be function of your boundary conditions and depth of the flange and width of the flange. So assuming bf is constant or bf is known, capital DF is going to be dictated by the slab thickness. Capital DF is we don't have control, so this is also assumed to be constant, and everything is constant except small d. And applied moment is what is the moment you are applying on this beam, or the moment to which this beam has to withstand. So everything is known in this equation except small d you can calculate. In the above expression, all quantities except d are known, hence d can be calculated from solution of this quadratic equation. So this is one way of getting your effective depth. Or this is the effective depth for a balanced T section. For a balanced T section, this is the effective depth. Once you get the effective depth for balanced section, you can find approximate value of lever arm distance. Or alternatively, what you can do is D here. Please note that here what you did is this lever arm. You did all this. I told you to note down the formula for trapezoid and apply that, and then you got this lever arm distance. If you don't want to do all this, you can take it like this. So JD can be taken approximately as 0.9 times D, or D minus DF divided by 2, whichever is the larger. Okay, whichever is larger, you take that, and then you can use that as well and find a relation between moment and small d and use that one. Any questions here? So this is for a balanced section. Any questions? So let's see whether this balanced T-beam is really economical or not. This balanced T-beam, it turns out it's not really economical. Let's see what the explanation for that. Economical depth of T-beam, okay? The balanced T-beam, balanced depth of a T-beam is whatever we arrived at is not really economical. This is because of the fact that in T-beams, large compression area is provided by the flange, and consequently balanced depth is comparatively reduced and the area of steel is increased. Okay, So in T-beam, what is happening is a large compression area is provided by the flange, and so the balance depth is going to reduce. The depth is going to be, once you have more area which is in compression flange, your depth, overall depth is going to, effective depth is going to reduce. If effective depth is reduced, then area of steel automatically reduce, because the lever arm distance is going to reduce. Okay. So let's make a note of this point, and then let's proceed further. Let's say cost of steel is something and cost of concrete is something, and we'll arrive at the total cost, and we'll try to minimize the cost, or we'll try to find depth such a way the cost is minimized. That is what is this economical depth. Let's proceed. Okay. The cost of steel is several times more than that of cost of concrete, and thus overall cost of T-beam having balanced depth is increased. To find an expression for economical depth of T-beam, cost ratio of steel and concrete has to be taken into account. Please note that the idea of giving you this information, or the idea of going through all this, is to add one more dimension to your understanding. Okay. So if you really want to extend whatever you learned and try to find economical section, then you can proceed in this manner. Okay. So let's go through this workout. Please note that we don't have much control on the slab thickness. So we don't have much control on the flange portion. So whatever this economical or the measures or whatever we want to reduce the cost for the overall section, we need to do only with the web region. So here, volume of concrete per meter length in the web is given by this. You see whether you agree with this or not. BW is the width of the this web region, and D is the small d is the overall effective depth, minus flange region is deducted, depth of the flange, plus cover depth is added. Cover depth is below the tensile reinforcement. You have a cover. That cover depth is DC. DC is effective cover of tension, effective cover to the tension steel. Okay. So volume of concrete per unit length. This is per unit length. And once you know the volume, if you know the cost of concrete, you can easily find what is the cost of concrete or cost of this rib. Cost of concrete in the rib per unit length, that also you can find. And if you know the cost of steel, similarly cost of steel per unit length of beam is given by area of steel multiplied by the cost of steel, or if the cost of steel is expressed as a percentage of cost of concrete, you can express it in this manner, where this mu is nothing but this ratio between the cost of steel to cost of concrete. Okay. So if you add these two, then you get the overall cost. Because we don't have control on the flange region, the overall cost of the T section can be assumed as this plus this. Volume of concrete provided by flange is not dependent on the depth of the rib and remains same irrespective of size of the beam. So the total cost is this plus this. And what is the area of steel? Area of steel is moment divided by permissible stress in steel multiplied by the lever arm distance. That's why instead of AST here nu RC times AST, instead of AST this is used. So total cost is given by this. Okay. And now we have some information about the lever arm distance and other things. We can further simplify this. Okay, let's see that. This equation. You note down this equation. Please note down this equation. Quickly. So total cost of T-beam is given by this. And that equation can be rearranged like this. And please note that here the total cost is given as a function of all these quantities, but we want to find an economical depth, a depth which reduces the cost of the beam. So all other quantities are taken as constants. In the above expression, BW, DF, and DC are fixed dimensions, are assumed to be fixed dimensions. And D, small d, which is the overall effective depth, is a variable. So I want to reduce the cost. So I have a function of D. I want to find what value of D makes this function minimum. So I need to take derivative of that and equate it to 0 and solve for small d. So that is what is done here. So you take derivative of it, equate it to 0, solve for small d. That is going to give you the economical depth for a T section. And once you get that D, you can find the lever arm. Or the lever arm. Here, please note that JD is the lever arm. Lever arm, if we can actually express in terms of this, also we need to express in terms of small d before we take the differentiation. So that is what is done here. JD is taken as D minus DF divided by 2 and substituted here. So everything is function of small d, and remaining quantities are taken as constants or fixed values. So you can take derivative and then you can solve for small d. That is going to give you the economical depth, and that is what is given here. So you just cross check whether these calculations are correct or not. Okay. So you take this small d, you take a note of this equation. Quickly take a note of this equation. Okay. So now let's see an example. And please note that while arriving at this D, we have not taken into account the cost of shuttering and other things. So some information is given about that. In the above expression, cost of shuttering has not been included. For deeper beams, the cost of shuttering may be appreciable. In that case, depth of the beam, whatever is found, okay, the depth of the beam thus found may be further reduced by 10 to 15% to account for additional cost of shuttering. And some guideline is given about the width of the rib. Width of the rib is to be kept minimum so as to accommodate tensile steel. Sometimes steel may be provided in 2 or 3 layers, but this reduces the lever arm. Okay?
See, there is a question regarding the term shuttering.
What is that question? Let me see that. What is shuttering? Shuttering is you should have some temporary. Please note that steel is steel. You are making a steel cage, and you need to cast this, or you need to provide the steel and then pour concrete, and then you need to have a mold. Mold in the sense that is made of some kind of steel sections, or it is made out of some wooden or some kind of this polymer based plastic or whatever. So this formwork is a temporary support till the concrete or the particular structural member reaches its strength to actually stand on its own. Okay. Professor Amlan, you want to add something?
See, I think you have already mentioned it. See, in concrete, the construction is very important. The reason is this construction is done in the site. Most of the time, the concrete is cast in the site, and hence the cost of this mold. The mold is also called formwork, and including the support for the formwork, it is called shuttering. Now, the cost of shuttering is important because these need to be transported to the site and erected, and this involves labor charges apart from the material charges. Hence, this point has been raised. In actual construction, it is not just section dimensions, but this another aspect, the shuttering cost, is also important. Okay.
And please note that the final finished product, in the sense the final finish of your beam, slab, all these are going to depend on quality of your formwork or shuttering. Okay. So
let me just add one more thing. See, sometimes that's why what is done is that the sizes of the beams are standardized even for cast in place construction, so that one doesn't have to make too many shutterings or too many molds, and you may be guided by those standard sizes that are provided by the contractor. Okay.
Anyway, this shuttering, it is going to have some life, in the sense you cannot use same shuttering after three or four castings. So some significant amount of this budget or money is involved in this for this providing this shuttering. Okay, so the cost, that's why you need to include the cost as well, 10 to 15%. So let's quickly go through an example for completeness, and then we'll stop there. Okay, so a floor consists of 100 mm thick slab with T-beams at 2 meters center to center. Okay, 2 meters centers. So please take a note of it. Capital DF is 100 mm and 2 meters center to center. This is what is this distance? This distance is required for us to calculate the effective flange width. So you take a note of it. These T-beams are 2 meters center to center. Simply supported span of beam being 6.45 meters. Simply supported information is given. That gives us an idea about L0. L0 is distance between the points of zero moments. For simply supported beam, points of zero moment is going to be same as 6.45 meters. Okay. Obtain dimensions of beam along with reinforcement if the live load on slab is 7,000 newtons per meter square. This is a slab. So the load is given per unit area, 7,000 Newton per meter square. And the material properties are given: permissible stress in concrete, permissible stress in steel, and corresponding neutral axis depth factor, and unit weight of concrete is also given. And anyway, this is for Fe 250 steel. Repeat the calculation for Fe 415. So let's see how to proceed. First of all, if you see this information, whatever is given, DF is given, and center to center spacing between the beams is given, and the simply supported span of 6.45 mm is given. So depth of the flange is given, capital DF is given. DF can be calculated based on the information that is given. What is not given? What is not given is width of the web is not given, depth of the web is also not given, and along with the area of steel. So how to proceed solving this problem? That is what is given here. Assume the depth, whatever we just learned, whatever we noted, assume depth as approximately 1/12 of the span. Okay, and you can check it's roughly going to be 500 mm. Okay, and now we got the depth, and width of the rib can be taken as depth of the rib, half of depth of the rib. That is what is done. This is the overall effective depth or overall depth, 500 mm. Overall depth is 500 mm, out of which 100 mm slab thickness is there. So your this depth of the rib is going to be 500 minus 100, and half of it is taken as width of the rib. So 200 mm. Okay. And then now we need to find the self weight of this beam and slabs along with the live load or whatever loads. Okay, along with the live load that is given. So what is the weight of this slab? Weight of this slab here, unit weight is given. 100 mm is the thickness of this slab. 100 divided by 1000, convert into meters, and then multiply with the density of concrete, you are going to get the weight of the slab per unit meter or unit square meter. And live load is given 7,000 Newton per meter square, and add the two loads, slab load and live load. And suppose if live load is not given in the problem, then you need to go to IS 875 part 2. IS 875 part 2, that is code of practice for design loads for buildings and structures. IS 875 part 2 is giving you for various cases what should be load that you need to adopt. So you need to refer this and get the values. Okay. Anyway, this is for completeness I am showing you. In our case, this is already given, so we don't need to do that. Take this 7,000 Newton per meter square and get the total load. And this is the total load per unit area. And how do I get per meter? Because I am designing a beam, I want per meter length. So this load multiplied by the center to center distance between the beams is going to give me load per meter length of beam. And now self weight of the beam. How do I get self weight of the beam? Self weight of slab is already accounted here. Self weight of the beam is depth of the rib, or sorry, width of the rib multiplied by depth of the rib multiplied by density of concrete, and I'm going to get in terms of as Newton per meter, and then add these two total loads, and then width of the flange based on this information that is given in the problem statement, capital DF, center to center distance, and also simply supported span of 6.45 mm. 6.45 meters. All that information you can find what is the width of the flange, and width of the flange is going to be L naught divided by, sorry, this is what is that? Just let me go to that formula. Here, for T beams, L naught divided by 6 plus BW plus 6 times DF. In our case, L naught is 6.45 meters. BW is 200 mm. DF is 100 mm. Better you convert everything into millimeters, and then you arrive at the width of the flange. Width of the flange should be taken as either this, but not greater than the breadth of the web plus half the clear distance between the adjacent beams on either side. So that's why we need to compare both of them, and that is what is done here. Width of the flange using that formula, whatever width and center to center spacing, and which out of these two, whichever is smaller, that is taken as width of the flange. So now you got the width of the flange, and then you can proceed further. Maximum bending moment is given by total load. Please note that this entire load is going to act like a UDL, and the beam is simply supported. So maximum bending moment is given by WL square divided by 8. So using that formula, you get the maximum bending moment. Once you get the maximum bending moment, just now we noted this equation, economical depth. Economical depth D, you can make use of this equation and get the economical depth, assuming some ratio of cost of steel to concrete. Cost of steel to concrete is taken as 50 times. So steel is 50 times costlier than concrete, or you can see the current market rates and then fix this new value. And it is here illustrated, taking new is equal to 50, economical depth is arrived. And then this is the value of economical depth. And what is the depth we started initially? Please note that we started assuming some depth, 500 mm. And what is the economical depth we got? 488.65 mm. The depth that we started with is 500 mm. And now taking the overall depth as 500 mm, because taking shuttering and other things into account, depth can be actually reduced further by 10 to 15%. So let's fix overall depth. So now whatever economical depth we got here, this is small d, okay? This is small d, please take a note of it. This is effective depth, cover is not included here. So, but what we started out with is, this is overall depth. This is total depth. So this is slightly higher. This is slightly higher, okay, than this one. And if you deduct the cover thickness, you are going to get the actual depth. The actual depth is going to be 450 mm. And economical depth is 488, whereas we are adopting 450. And this can be justified like the shuttering cost and other things, 10% accounting that this can be further reduced. So 480 can be further reduced to 450. So this is the effective depth. Once you got this effective depth, you can find the approximate value of lever arm. As we seen in the last class, once you get approximate value of lever arm, you get the area of steel, and then you need to go through that entire process. Okay. Once you get area of steel, you need to calculate the axial neutral axis depth, and all this procedure you need to repeat, and then find the area of steel, and then you see whether area of steel is converged or not, and then also finally you need to check whether stresses are within the permissible limit. If anything is violated, you need to repeat the design. Okay, so that is how you need to proceed. That is what is mentioned here. Check the neutral axis depth, concrete stresses as in the previous example, and same workout or same the calculations are repeated with Fe415 steel. You can go through it, okay? And if you have any questions, let's discuss in the next class. I'll stop here. Any comments or questions?
Sir, when we took 1/12 of span, 6.45 by 12, it was actually 537 mm, but you reduced to it 500 mm. Isn't this a problem?
No, it's only approximate guideline. Understand? It's an approximate guideline. And if you want, you can start with 550 mm.
Okay, sir.
Any other questions? And related to that question related to assignment, you please send an email.
Yes, sir, I have already sent it.
Okay. And other thing is, please make a note of whatever point I made. And in case if something has to be revised, whatever you noticed, you're seeing that you are ending up with a complex number or something like that. So what can be adjusted, like in a more reasonable way, that you can also try that. Okay. Professor Amlan, you want to add something?
Not right now.
So in the next class, we are going to see other limit state or serviceability conditions and other things. Okay, how to calculate deflections and how to calculate this check for crack width and other things. Okay, I'll stop here. Thank you.